Hello and welcome to the Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast that focuses on our distinct approach to this amazing system of understanding human nature. My name is Mario Sakura, coming to you from Philadelphia, and I'm joined by Maria Jose Munita.
Hello from Santiago, Chile.
And Tamer Zanati.
Hello from Cairo, Egypt.
We are partners at Awareness to Action International, a consulting firm specializing in practical applications of the Enneagram. You can find out more about our work at awareness2action.com.
In this season of the podcast, we are focusing on exploring each of the 3 instinctual biases and 9 strategies through the lens of a movie, looking at one movie that we feel represents the essence of the bias or Ennea-type.
So make some popcorn, sit back, and enjoy the program. Well, hi, everybody. Here we are with our next episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. And today we are talking about Enneagram Type 9 and the movie The Big Lebowski. I'm Mario Sakura, and I'm here with Maria Jose and Tamer. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hello, Mario. Hello,
right.
Maria Jose.
Hi, how are you?
So the Big Lebowski, one of my favorite movies. I've seen this movie not as many times as The Godfather, which we discussed last time, but enough times to have big chunks of it memorized. And it's not a movie that appeals to everybody, but I think that better than anything else that I've seen, it describes what's at the heart of Enneagram Type 9, which we call striving to feel peaceful.
Yeah, it's amazing because when I was watching it for the second or third time, I think, before the podcast, I was thinking it's just not a movie that I would choose to watch. It's not. I watched it because you have insisted over the years, and now we're recording the podcast. However, I do enjoy it. So it's weird, but it's not my kind of movie. And there's such funny parts of it that I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. What was your reaction to the movie, Tamer?
Well, it was, the rhythm was a little bit slow for me, but I acknowledge the way the joke is really interesting. I mean, it's like situational kind of comedy that makes you really laugh. So although it's like laid back, very much laid back, but you have a laugh every now and then, and you start waiting for the next situation to happen.
Well, hopefully, as we go through the podcast, you guys will develop a deeper appreciation of the movie. And I will say that when the movie came out, it didn't get the best reviews in the world, right? It only has an 83% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but it has come to be considered a classic, and it is recognized by the National Film Registry as a fundamental movie. So I think too we need to put out a disclaimer about being fair to nines as we talk about this movie, right? Because when we talked about The Godfather, I think most eights are kind of will take it as a compliment to be compared to Vito Corleone, right? Whereas I don't think many people would take it as a compliment to be compared to Jeff the Dude Lebowski. Right. So and that's going to happen sometimes with these movies, right? That sometimes there will be a certain romance to the character that's attractive, and other times maybe not so much, right? Fewer people are going to say, "Ooh, that's me." At the same time, if you don't have a character that's very clear and almost exaggerated in their Enneagram type, then the movie's not that helpful.
Yeah, I think that works with most movies. It has to be exaggerated so that we can see all the patterns and the traits really visible. Not all nines are like that.
Yeah, having a preferred strategy 9, I did experience what you said exactly.
So here's the way I was thinking of it prior to our podcast, right? Is that certainly not every 8 is Sonny Corleone, right? But every 8 has a little bit of Sonny in them somewhere. And I think the same thing applies to 9s, that certainly not every 9 is the dude, but, there's a little bit of the dude in every 9. I just want to be very clear here as we go into this that, we've all 3 worked with, people who are very successful 9s, who are very hardworking, and certainly not the laziest man in all of Los Angeles County, as the narrator says. So right.
And I still can relate to this as well. I mean, some of the things that I like. I mean, I can see in myself. But let me ask you, Mario.
Yes.
I mean, beside that it represents nines, what makes you like this movie and wanting to watch it?
I'll tell you what. Let's save that for a little bit, right? I mean, there are a lot of things in this movie, and it's really kind of a movie geek movie. Okay, and I think a little bit later when we get to some of the reactions to the movie, we'll talk about that. Okay, I just think it's brilliantly written, funny, tremendously acted. The characters are hilarious. It is slow. It is the plot just doesn't really make any sense, right? I mean, it does sort of, but the plot's not the point to this movie. Okay, so but we'll come back to that. All right. So again, we want to emphasize that when we do these podcasts, we're not focused on characters necessarily, even though for sure the dude played by Jeff Bridges is a 9 in the movie, right? But I think even more than that, again, the whole feeling of the movie is 9ish, right? I mean, it's like the tortured psyche of a not very healthy Enneagram Type 9 throughout this movie for a lot of reasons that we'll discuss.
Yeah, the songs, the lyrics are all 9. It all I mean, it speaks about all the 9ish things that 9s do, and
Yes.
it's the rhythm. It's slow and 9ish, and it's everything.
Yeah, the dissociative scenes and the fantasies and the dream sequences are again are very 9ish, but we'll get into that. So I think before we go further, let's talk about what it means to be a 9. Right, so there's a lot of different approaches in the Enneagram literature to that. We talk about the 9 as striving to feel peaceful. Okay, so talk a little bit about that, if you would.
So peace is like the main theme of the 9. Is like trying to keep the surface of the pond like still without any ripples, and whenever ripples would come, either try to calm it down or even make that in your own mind. This is some experience I can relate to, and we can see this in the movie. Sometimes you can see like the daydreaming kind of scenes that happens inside the main character. So 9s would be really able to see other points of view and being able to dissociate themselves from some situations on a positive side that make them sometimes good moderators or mediators, and sometimes good leaders that can see other members of the system and bring them in and feeling them, making them feel heard. And on the negative side, it can be avoiding conflicts or confrontations, and sometimes not taking a good care of their well-being or looking after threats that can harm them. They can be indecisive and sometimes stubborn, and the laziness, which we explain it in a different way. It's more of a psycho-spiritual laziness, because we see lots of 9s that are very active and really can do things, but it's the theme of really numbing themselves from situations, especially when they are stressful.
Right.
Yeah, it's this lot has to do with neglecting things that are important for me. Mm-hmm. It's not kind of being lazy at work or anything like that. It's how I neglect taking care of my own needs, what's important for me, and will make a difference. And these striving to feel peaceful, these kind of feeling need drives a certain kind of thinking. And this thinking has to do with what will make me feel peaceful or not. And when a situation seems threatening or feels like there will be a conflict, I'll probably avoid it. And that manifests in different ways. Sometimes they're just passive-aggressive and they pretend to agree when they don't, or say that they will do something and they just don't want to do it. And sometimes they just withdraw and don't say anything. Sometimes they might get really angry and do something about it, but it's all because they want to satisfy this need of feeling peaceful.
And this is an important point. Again, as we said earlier, that we're not suggesting nines are lazy, not suggesting nines are always passive, not suggesting nines aren't ambitious in life. I've worked with many very senior leaders and very successful people who are nines. But in the classic Enneagram, the vice of the nine is sloth. Right. But again, it's a psychospiritual sloth, like Tamara said. It's about self-forgetting. It's about being slothful about the things that are important to me, as Maria Jose said, and a tendency to put other people first in a lot of ways and circumstances. So the fixation in the classical Enneagram literature of the nine is indolence or acedia, the Latin term for resisting change, right? It's that I don't want to change. I don't want to be pulled out of my comfort zone. And that's one of the things about this movie. There's no character growth at all in this movie, right? I mean, the dude is the same person he is at the end of the movie as he was at the beginning. The virtue associated with point 9 is action or industry. It's this ability to kind of get things done. And we see even in the dude, we see these moments of assertiveness. And when for example, when he starts to figure out everything that's going on, he becomes assertive and aggressive for those points, right? So one of the important things to understand when we're talking about nines is the tension around inertia, right? A body at rest stays at rest and doesn't often move until it's acted upon by external forces. And again, this is something we see throughout the movie of the dude being acted upon by external forces to get kind of pushed into the next episode or the next bit of drama.
Yeah, I think it's important to note how likable nines usually are. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the kind of more negative stuff, but they're likable, easygoing, and this movie shows that as well. This is a character that no matter what he does, it's just easy to like. And and that's my experience with nines.
Yeah, and that comes from, again, striving to feel peaceful and not offending anyone and trying to be like at peace with everyone by focusing probably on saying good things, even if confrontation is needed, trying to compromise somehow. That makes them pleasant and sometimes, and that gets them into the syndrome of the nice guy that does not really get things done sometimes.
It is. There is this likability quality, and there's also this sort of grounding quality that nines have of kind of calming other people down as well, which is one of the reasons we like to be around them. They're the people who can always say, okay, let's just take a deep breath here. Let's relax. Let's think about this, right? And sort of dampen the emotional turmoil that's happening around them or bring down the emotional turmoil. Again, with the strategies, when we talk about them, we talk about how they come from an internal need to feel a certain way. Maria Jose mentioned this already, and that shapes the way they think about things, and that shapes the way they act in the world. So what we see in Jeff, the dude Lebowski, is this, all these actions that are meant to create calm in his world, right? Whether it's smoking dope or, the constant drinking of White Russians or listening to cassettes of the songs of whales while he's in the bathtub surrounded by candles, right? It's all about these, efforts to make him feel calm. Now, with the strategies, we can use them in adaptive ways or maladaptive ways, and that's the key thing to keep in mind. So, Maria Jose, why don't you tell us about the relationship between the strategies of point 9 and point 3?
Yeah, so what nines usually neglect is the strategy at point 3. It's striving to feel outstanding. And that means that they kind of distort it. And striving to feel outstanding feels to them like seeming arrogant. And that's something they avoid. So they try not to seem to kind of want to feel outstanding, and they just neglect it. That creates a contradiction because they want to be noticed, but then they avoid it, so they kind of hold back. So it's kind of this tension that's created because I want to feel outstanding but not seem arrogant, but then I hold back, and then I'm kind of pissed off because people don't notice me. So it's kind of that tension. The support strategy is striving to feel secure. That's at point 6. So that means that when I feel secure, I feel even more peaceful. It's a way to reinforce the preferred strategy of striving to feel peaceful. So feeling secure, it's not something that they do for the sake of feeling secure only, but it makes them feel even more peaceful.
Tamara, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, and actually, resulting from this dynamics with the point 6, it results into sometimes risk avoidance, and this can really pose some threats on the, as you said, that there is no real progression in the whole movie when it comes to personality, because probably you're not taking risks that are needed to progress and to grow the personality. So that can be seen very obvious.
So there's good examples of all these things in the movie. So I think the next thing for us to do is to talk about the movie a little bit and introduce the characters so listeners who haven't seen the movie know what we're talking about. But before we do that, why don't we take a short break?
Awareness to Action offers a unique approach to applying the Enneagram professionally with leaders and organizations, as well as for personal development. What makes us stand apart is our Enneagram expertise and focus on understanding human nature.
We know people because we see people. And this is a skill set that can be taught and learned. Human nature is complex and simple at the same time. Our mission is to help people see clearly and act accordingly. Why? Because the ability to see ourselves and others clearly and honestly is essential. It enables us to act in more adaptive and useful ways.
The multicultural team in Awareness to Action will help you learn tools and practices to become more aware and also to understand and engage people more effectively. Learn more at awareness-to-action.com. Join us at 2021 for exciting learning opportunities.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the movie, The Big Lebowski, before we go any further. The Big Lebowski is a movie starring Jeff Bridges and directed by the Coen brothers, written and directed by the Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan, who I think are just master filmmakers and have made some of my favorite movies, including Miller's Crossing, No Country for Old Men, Raising Arizona, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It was made for a $15 million budget in, I think it was 1997. Not a big hit initially. The domestic gross was only $18 million. The worldwide gross was $46 million. So typically a movie has to double its budget in order to be considered to be profitable. So it was profitable, but not a big deal. And like we said before, the reviews were mixed. There were some really good reviews from smart people, and then really some not so good reviews from people who weren't quite so smart. Or
that comment is a bit biased, isn't it? Just because you like the movie.
Exactly right. Exactly. So you're figuring out how this works, Maria Jose.
Yeah.
So
I've figured you out for a long time.
All right. Let's see. But it probably went on to make a whole lot more on DVD and streaming, because it did, a few years after its release, it started to take on a cult following and grew to be very popular in some circles, even though Seth, our producer, has not seen it yet. Seth, you need to remedy that at some point. So what is the movie about? The movie is about two Jeff Lebowskis. Okay, one is a slacker who walks around Los Angeles in his bathrobe and looks like underwear and flip-flops, but apparently they're shorts. And the other one is a wealthy business person and philanthropist, or so it seems. And there's a incident of mistaken identity where the slacker Lebowski, known as the Dude, is mistaken for the wealthy Lebowski, and people come after him looking for money. And from there, hijinks ensue. There's lots of bowling. There's a kidnapping plot. There is kind of a porno theme underneath all of it. Also, it's taking place in the context of the first Gulf War when the U.S. and other countries went into Iraq in 1991. So there's a whole lot going on here, but not really much of a plot. And the Coen brothers did that purposely. Right? They said that they wanted to create a movie in the Raymond Chandler tradition. Raymond Chandler was the mystery writer who had these complex plots that really were irrelevant to the point that the creator was trying to make, which was more about something about human nature. So I was watching this with my wife the other night, and she was only half watching it, I think, but we got about 90 minutes into it, and she said, I've been watching this movie for 90 minutes and I have no idea what's happening here. And this would be, this happened to be at one of the musical sequences at the bowling alley too. So, so it's a movie, kind of about just a bunch of stuff that happens. Comments on the plot, guys.
It reminds me of, and probably maybe because of the personality as well, of Seinfeld. It's a show about nothing. So, it reminds me of this theme of really getting everything and nothing at the same time. So
yes, a lot of things happen, right? For sure. A lot of craziness happens, but none of it really seems to go anywhere. Maria Jose?
Yeah, it's like if you were watching the first 10 or 20 minutes of a movie, when you're trying to figure it out, but that just lasts for the whole movie. That you're trying to figure it out, where is it going? And at some point, there's a thread that you can kind of catch and figure it out. But it's really hard. Yeah. Just have to enjoy it, Just not try to understand it, but just enjoy it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, this movie is you're right. I mean, there's it's meant to be experienced and enjoyed. There's some really, really funny things in here, right? There's some really creative scenes. The soundtrack is amazing. It's from the Bob Dylan opening of "The Man in Me" all the way through to Townes Van Zant's cover of the Rolling Stones' "Dead Flowers" that closes the movie, and probably the coolest version of Hotel California you'll ever hear by the Gypsy Kings, when it introduces the character of Jesus Quintana, who we'll have to come back to at some point. Right? So perhaps
I had a nightmare after watching him.
Perhaps the creepiest character in all of movies.
Yeah.
So now, when you watch this movie, and if you appreciate movies, it's part slacker film, which were very popular during the 90s. It's part Los Angeles film noir, detective movie. It's part Busby Berkeley musical at certain parts. Busby Berkeley was a musical director from the the 40s, and it's a part kind of an existential meditation, philosophical meditation on the meaning of life. There's also, like we said, some homage to Boogie Nights, the movie about the porn industry in the 70s and 80s, and it's part social commentary. So there's a lot packed in here. There's action. There is comedy. I think it's a very funny movie. Also, we have to say that there's a whole lot of swearing in this movie. I was surprised to find, I did a little research on this, and I was surprised to find that it actually only ranks 29th on the list of movies in their use of the F word. Right. I thought it would be much higher than that because pretty much every sentence has that word in it. We don't have a swearing policy on our podcast here. We're going to have to come up with one. I'm going to try to avoid that word, although it's a little hard to, during this. Okay. All right.
Don't commit to too much, Mario. It will be hard to find movies. It will be tough to find movies if we put too many rules around it.
Exactly right. No, I'm only talking about our repetition of the words, right? Because look, how can you get through talking about this movie without saying, fuck it, let's go bowling, right? I mean, it's so anyway, but we're going to try to avoid that.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mario, because I don't know if Maria Jose, you have the same impression or not. The movie is not very well known here in Egypt or in the Middle East. When I mention the name of the movie, I don't get real reaction that people recognize it. So what makes it a movie that is interesting in the US?
Yeah, I would say it's only interesting to movie geeks, right? I mean, and so it became popular in colleges in the early 2000s, right? So honestly, what would happen is a lot of people at college would sit around, get high, and watch The Big Lebowski and start quoting lines from it. So you can go out there and you can find T-shirts that say things like "The dude abides" or this aggression shall not stand, and other quotes from the movie. So it's more kind of a niche film, but still highly regarded by people who are, again, movie geeks, I think. Maria Jose, is it popular in your part of the world?
Not at all. Just like in Egypt. Nobody
Yeah.
has heard of it.
Yeah, well, all right. So let's try to change that.
I was surprised that my daughter watched the movie and she liked it. So I asked her before watching it, because it was my first time to watch it. I asked her, "Did you watch The Big Lebowski?" She said, "It's an amazing movie. I laughed a lot." So
yes,
that's interesting.
Yes. So there's a lot of comedy for sure, and Jeff Bridges is great. Jeff Bridges is probably a 9. Well, not probably. Jeff Bridges is a 9 in real life. I've been following him for years and years and years, and almost always plays a 9. He's a practicing Zen Buddhist, and just everything about the guy is 9ish. So he was the perfect character to play the dude. Again, it's a movie with huge cultural impact in the United States. I was talking about references. There's even references to the Hitchcock movie, North by Northwest, with the mistaken identity subplot, which is a movie that you should watch if you haven't seen it. Okay? So again, it captures 9ness in a way that few others do. Okay, this ease in going through life, this dissociativeness, etc. And it starts right at the beginning of the movie. Okay, the first scene opens with a tumbling tumbleweed, right? With the song "Tumbling Tumbleweed," and it's this tumbleweed just being blown across Los Angeles. Okay? And as we said, this is about being acted upon rather than having your own sense of agency, which is one of the traps that 9s can fall into. And Sam Elliott, who plays the cowboy, does a voiceover setting up the movie.
Regarding what you were saying, it's like sometimes 9s, it's like things happen to them. It's not what they make happen. And they can make things happen, of course. But many times what they're doing is what life kind of made happen. That's something that many times we work with people.
Absolutely. Tamara, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you would ask a 9 about that, you would say, "I just want a peaceful life. Just want to have, life with no problems." So that, the elimination of problem or rocking the boat somehow would get them into this passive position where the life start act upon them versus they do some actions.
And what's great about the opening voiceover by Sam Elliott, who has that great gravelly voice, is that it's kind of being made out to be this epic sort of, this epic odyssey that's about to happen, right? And he's talking about, this, sometimes there's a man, I wouldn't call him a hero, but, because what's a hero after all? But there's this man and he's the man of his time and all of these things. And, but again, it's just this guy in his bathrobe who likes to bowl, smoke pot, who, just a bunch of stuff happens to. And, and it even closes out with, the same sort of glorifying of the tale that you just heard.
What happened to me with that is that he was just so authentically kind of not caring about anything.
So where do we meet Jeff Lebowski? Where do we meet the dude, Maria Jose? Do you remember? So we meet him in the supermarket. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, buying milk and drinking from the kind of but it just crudely kind of just himself, not caring about anything else. And there was something not heroic, but to be admired there.
Yes. Yes, the dude is the dude, right? And this is one of the beauties of the character. It's just he is who he is, and he just doesn't care what you think about it, right? He's standing in the supermarket aisle in his bathrobe and his flip-flops, and he's drinking from the milk carton, and he writes a check that he post dates for, and the check is for 69 cents. And you also see the first scene where he starts to be influenced by the things other people say, right? So he sees the first George Bush on the television saying, this aggression shall not stand. And Lebowski adopts that, and he starts to use it. And you see him doing that throughout the movie, taking things that other people say and then kind of, becoming that. So even though we say he's who he is, one of the ways nines stay who they are is by actually adapting to other people. Right? I know that sounds contradictory, but it's a way of saying, I'm going to pretend to care. I'm going to pretend to, adapt to who you are, but I'm really just going to stay me inside. Tamara, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you a question because, again, this U.S. culture and with the nickname of the dude. So, I mean, to me, it means nobody. So it's like it's really the core of the nine of trying to be transparent, does not exist, and that becomes like a repetition somehow. Did I get it the right way, or?
You're absolutely right, and so there's this contrast between him and the other Jeff Lebowski, where he says to him, "No, you're Jeff Lebowski. I'm the dude." And there is this anonymity to it, and there's this turning over of identity, but it's in that turning over of identity that I get to maintain my own sense of me, right? Even though it's not probably the healthiest sense of me. Okay? So you're absolutely right. It is this striving toward anonymity in a way that we see in the nine. Okay. So Lebowski leaves the supermarket. He goes home, and immediately he's there, and this is when his trouble begins, right? So he is attacked in his, let's say, modest apartment. He's attacked by two. We'll just call them two goons for now, because again, who they are is a little complicated for this, right? We'll be here all day explaining the plot. But he gets his head shoved in a toilet, and they keep saying to him, "Where's the money, Lebowski? Where's the money?" Because the other Jeff Lebowski's wife owes money to the porn movie producer, Jackie Treehorn, and these two goons have come to collect it. So they start to realize, we've got the wrong guy. And as the guy is pushing his head into the toilet multiple times, and he says, "Where's the money?" Do you guys remember what he says at that point?
It's down there somewhere.
It's down there somewhere. Let me look again, right? So,
which is passive aggressive.
Yes.
A tool a resource that nines use quite often. It seems cool, like, let me look again. But then he's pissing them off.
Yeah, excellent point. And he's also passive aggressive when the guy holds up the bowling ball and says, "What is this?" And he says, "Well, obviously you don't play golf, right?" And then and then when they finally leave, and again, what sort of sets off a lot of the turmoil is that one of the guys pees on his carpet that really tied the room together, as we hear over and over again. Okay. And again, to show just kind of this unflappability that nines often have, he just kind of reaches into the toilet and pulls out his sunglasses, right, and pops his sunglasses back on and sits there looking like he doesn't have a care in the world. Yeah, so the opening scene up to that, again, really establishes who this guy is and what nineness is all about, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it establishes what's nine it's all about. And starting from when the camera moves to his house, it's like things happen to him and he's completely passive about them, not really trying to shape them, even in a peaceful way. I mean, it's like being completely passive to whatever. And the most active things he would do is the passive aggression, which really explains a lot about the events that will happen after that.
Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness-to-action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com.
Okay, so we left Jeff Lebowski sitting on his toilet with his sunglasses and his wet hair. The next scene I want to talk about is actually, again, a sequence of scenes. They're bookended by scenes in the bowling alley, and in between is when Jeff, the dude Lebowski, meets the Big Lebowski. Lebowski, or the dude, is part of a bowling league, and his partners are Walter Schobach, played by John Goodman, and Donnie, played by Steve Buscemi. Very different characters, sort of the ego and the id, or the superego and the, I don't know, that doesn't hold up. I mean, Walter's just a maniac, and Donnie's kind of a lovable, goofy, kind of guy. What happens there is that the dude is telling them about what happened with being attacked and his rug being peed on. Walter, probably, I don't know, guys, you think transmitting 8 or...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, there's maybe an argument could be made for transmitting 6, but I think, probably one of those, right? So, but clearly an aggressive character who is, hasn't gotten over his time in Vietnam for sure, and keeps bringing that up. And he encourages the dude to not take this sitting down, that he should go to the real Lebowski, who owed the money, and try to get some resolution around his ruined carpet, which held the room together very nicely. This is where, again, we see Lebowski, the dude, acted upon again. He goes to meet the Big Lebowski, and there's just this wonderful scene with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is, when he died a few years ago, was a tragic loss, a tremendous actor. And he's showing the dude all the awards and all of the pictures of that the Big Lebowski had accomplished in life. And the dude has, he's a bit of a different character, right? They compare as very different people.
He couldn't care less. All those accomplishments and all the people that were in the pictures, and he only wanted his carpet back. I mean, he could have gone so much more for the kind of bad, the bad situation, all the complications, but he just wanted a carpet back.
Yes.
Yeah, and during this scene, while he's really looking at the photos and the certificate at the wall, I can sense disrespect for the kind of arrogance the Big Lebowski is being presented, but in a very subtle way that is reacted upon in a kind of passive aggression as well. So it's like some sarcasm about a photo or a certificate or something as you go.
Yes, and so when he meets the Big Lebowski, the Big Lebowski is a very aggressive and angry guy. He keeps referring to him as a loser and a bum, and what do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? Every time somebody pees on a carpet, I'm supposed to do something about it, and all of these things. That character, I think, is kind of a 3-ish character, probably a transmitting 3. And if you remember, there's a scene where his daughter, Maud, says, father's weakness has always been vanity. And again, which we associate with the 3. And here you have this contrast between this guy who is ambitious and aggressive and accomplished and very wealthy with his young trophy wife, and the dude who is very different.
You can see some disrespect in the way the Big Lebowski is talking to the dude and really attacking him in a way. Yeah, lots of disrespect. And
I'd say really, a lot, yes, absolutely.
And highlighting the worthless kind of not having a job and no achievements and so on. And the reaction of the dude is like, okay, man, cool down. I mean, it's like, it's not really defending himself, or I'm trying just to, okay. And at the end, he just started to put his sunglasses, completely shut up and completely withdrawn from the conversation. So it tells a lot.
Yes. Again, the passive aggressiveness that we see, right?
Yeah.
And Maria Jose, what does he do next?
He just says, "Oh, take a different route." He leaves and then convinces the Big Lebowski's assistant that he was allowed to get any carpet from the house that he liked, and just took a carpet without fighting for it. He just took it.
Yes.
Which is nine-ish as well. It's like, I will not fight for it. I'll just find another way to get what I want.
Exactly right. I'm going to get what I want and just do it a different way. So, great.
Yeah.
So the next thing that happens is the Big Lebowski's wife gets kidnapped. She's a young woman, or apparently gets kidnapped. And this sets off another chain of events because the Big Lebowski wants the dude to be the bag man and deliver the money. And again, lots of things go wrong. Lebowski doesn't want anything to do with that. But again, the John Goodman character, Walter, convinces him to get involved. And they try to rip off the Big Lebowski. We should say Walter tries to rip off the Big Lebowski, when in reality, again, the dude is just along for the ride. Crazy things happen. It gets worse. And, again, they go on.
When they're in the car and they're supposed to deliver the money, throw it out the window, actually. And Walter wants to do a different thing, and he gets his way and does what he wants. The dude starts to get pissed off, starts to get angry. And you can see how he has such a hard time setting boundaries, having Walter do something different. He's not able to. And he's getting angrier and angrier, but he's not effective at setting that boundary and stopping Walter, which pisses him off even more.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And there's the scene where Walter pulled the gun on Smokey, played by the musician Jimmy Dale Gilmore, about his toe going over the line at during the bowling game match. I don't even know what you call bowling. And by the way, has there ever been a more nine-ish sport than bowling, right? I mean, this is the other beauty of it, is that, the sport they pick is bowling, which is just kind of chilling out and as laid back a sport as you can get, right? So again, that's very nine-ish. But Walter pulls a gun on him and threatens to shoot him for, if he gives himself a 9 rather than taking a 0 for the toe going over the line. And the dude calms Walter down eventually, and they're talking in the car, and the dude says to Walter, "Just calm down, will you?" And Walter's saying, "I'm calmer than you are." And they just have this back and forth about who's calmer. And
there's one more thing, that the dude talks about himself on third person sometimes.
Yes.
So he gave the dude a beeper, and that's something like dissociating from himself, talking about him as if he were another person. That was interesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to get back to this drawing good boundary with others. And there's a very good sentence during the bowling game where he was telling his friends about what happens with the rug and so on. And Walter would said, it's about drawing a line on the sand. So it's like he diagnosed the problem and give it to him clearly.
Yes. Great point. Great point. I hadn't picked up on that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's about setting boundaries and asserting yourself and standing up for yourself when people take advantage of you. Let's see. So the next scene I wanted to talk about was when the Nihilists break into his apartment when he is in the bathtub, and he's listening. I don't know if you caught this, but he's listening to the songs of whales, and he's surrounded by candles in the dark, and he's smoking a joint. And the three Nihilists break in with a marmot. and and they want to get the money. So, so again, I'm not going to go into where the nihilists come from, right? It's too much to explain, but it does work. And and so Lebowski's response as they come storming into his apartment is, "Hey, man, this is private property, right?" And then he pauses and he says, "Hey, nice marmot," right? Before they throw the marmot into the bathtub with him.
Which is not so nice.
Which is not so nice. No, it's not such a nice marmot after all. Apparently not fond of bathtubs, right? So, so this sets up another conflict and another chain of events that he gets thrown into. You know, just the idea of nihilism in general, right? Nihilism, they keep saying we don't believe in anything, right? So again, it's this absence of assertion that comes through over and over again. The nihilists are just kind of there and they do what comes up, and there's not any real forward thinking in their approach. And at one point, Donnie says, "Are they Nazis?" And you know, and Walter makes the distinction: no, they're not Nazis. They're nihilists. They don't believe in anything. Now, again, this isn't to say that nines don't believe in anything, but the dilemma of the nine is turning over their beliefs and their needs and their desires to other people. The nihilists also give us two great musician cameos with Flea, the bass player from the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the day. He's one of the nihilists. And also the girl whose toe they cut off to pretend is the Big Lebowski's wife's toe is played by the musician Amy Mann. If you're not an Amy Mann fan, you should be, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so they later have a fight with the nihilist that kind of goes crazy, and during that fight, poor Donnie has a heart attack and dies. The fight with the nihilist, I don't know how you can just not laugh at that scene when they're fighting in the parking lot with the one nihilist with the sword, and you know, and they're playing the music on the little boom box and all these things. So, all right, thoughts on the nihilist, guys?
Well, the funny part in this scene that this is the only group that is less smart than the group of friends of the dude and his friends. So I mean, this is the only group that they met that are really competing with them of the minimum score of smartness.
This is true. This is true. Not a bunch of brain surgeons here.
What happened to me with them is that they were hard to classify or to read or to think anything of them, you know. And that's what sometimes happens to me with nines, that I don't know where they are. I don't know what they want or what they stand for. Not all nines, of course, but sometimes when it's something that could create conflict, they remain quiet or they don't assert their point of view, and they're hard to read. And that's what happened to me with this group of people.
So during that fight, poor Donnie has a heart attack and dies. And you know, by this point, kind of all
I never understood how Walter realized that it was a heart attack so quickly. just genius, you know.
Some scenes some scenes are made this way, like informing you that the toes are cut or not cut. It's just like, I mean, not logical. Only the camera goes to the toe and show you that it's cut or not cut. So it's like there is no sequence of events that you discover that with. So I mean, similar to this scene as well.
So Walter and the dude have Donnie cremated. Apparently he didn't have any other friends or family. So they make the arrangements, and Walter gets upset about having to pay $175 for the container or receptacle, I think they call it. So what do? They go off to the nearest Ralph's supermarket to get a big coffee can, take poor Donnie up to the cliffs by the ocean. And Walter says a few words. We're getting there, Maria Jose. Maria Jose's laughing her head off in the background there. So Walter says a few nice words, and then they start to spread Donnie's ashes. The dude makes the mistake of standing behind Walter while they do this, and ends up covered in poor Donnie as we go on.
And never moves. I mean, he never moved. He kept on receiving the whole ashes without really trying even to move away from the direction of the wind.
So So you're absolutely right. Again, even with his friend's cremains being blown all over him by the wind, the dude remains unflappable and hangs in there without showing anything. So we've got one more scene to cover, and then a few more comments I want to make about the nines, particularly about the different subtypes. But before we do that, why don't we take a quick break?
Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness-to-action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com.
And we're back, and we're talking about the Big Lebowski and Enneagram Type 9. Final scene of, again, capturing this nineness, and a delightful scene. So all these crazy things have happened, right? People have died. Money has been stolen. We didn't even talk about Maud and the whole, baby making thing. Even that he didn't have any agency over, right? Even becoming a father after being tricked by Maud into impregnating her, it was something he did passively. But the dude is back in his natural habitat, which is the bowling alley, and he's met there once again by Sam Elliott playing the cowboy, who is summarizing things. And he said, strikes and balls, ups and downs, the dude abides, right? Mm-hmm. Which is one of the famous lines, the dude abides. And the cowboy, goes on and he said, the dude abides. I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that. It's good knowing he's out there, the dude, taking her easy for all us sinners. And this is kind of the value of the nines, right? Is this ability to just get perspective, to calm down, to lower the temperature of things, to just kind of chill out and look at things in a bigger worldview, and to understand that, life has ups, life has downs, but in the long run, it all sort of evens out. So I think it's a nice way to capture that final message and what's happening with point 9. Comments on the last scene?
Yeah, and I think that, as you're saying, really captures how nines make us feel, that there's comfort in that. It's comfortable to be around them. It's easy, and it's kind of, let's say, soothing. Maybe that's too much, but life seems probably less complicated and relaxing or easy.
Yeah, I guess what it captures, this sentence at the end, that all different personalities are required in life, and this specific one, the 9, is really making people not really feeling bad about things. Knowing that there's someone there will not escalate as things would escalate, maybe would accommodate and embrace and try to bring this soothing energy to a situation. So, I feel like in some situation we need that. So this is like an element of life that we need. And somehow this is the value of the 9.
So when we talked about The Godfather in the last episode, we had very good examples of all 3 subtypes, the preserving 8, navigating 8, and transmitting 8. In this movie, we really don't have that. I don't think we could argue about what the dude's subtype is. I see him as a navigating 9. Right. Some people might think he's preserving because the focus on the rug and all that sort of stuff, but he really didn't seem to be preserving to me, right? Even he was just undemanding of his environment, which again kind of fits with the navigating 9. Yes. I remember talking to a client one time who's a very successful and high-level executive, and he said, in reality, my environment doesn't matter to me. I could live in a refrigerator box if I really could. And again, not all navigating nines would want to live in a refrigerator box, but the dude comes pretty close with his apartment.
Yeah, and who knows if he had gone after the guys to get the rug back if Walter hadn't pushed them.
That's right. It was all about being shaped by his people, right? His friends and his group. He took on their identity throughout this, right? He became the person Walter wanted him to be. He became the person the Big Lebowski wanted him to be. He became the person Maud wanted him to be for short periods. So I would see he's probably a navigating nine. The preserving nine is a little more structured, right? A little more grounded, a little more consistent in their approach to things. The transmitting nine, if nothing else, is a little bit more focused on their appearance than we certainly didn't see in the dude, but also just more ambitious. We find that transmitting nines are often mistaken for threes because of their assertiveness and their ambition and their willingness to go after what they want in certain situations. We did see some great examples of transmitting characters. Certainly Walter was a transmitter. Jesus Quintana was probably a transmitter, right? Played again by John Turturro, with the rings and the hairnet, and even the way he was polishing his bowling ball was pretty.
That image will never leave my mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And walking like he's dancing, he's not really walking.
Yes. Very, very much a disturbed sort of peacock character, right? Let's see, Maud, the Big Lebowski's daughter, played by Julianne Moore, who was just wonderful in this. I think kind of a transmitting one character.
Yeah, probably.
This, right?
Yeah, probably.
So Jackie Treehorn, the porn producer, again, probably another transmitter, probably a transmitting 8. So lots and lots of transmitters in this movie. Donnie, how about Donnie? What do you guys think about Donnie as his subtype? I have a theory.
Probably preserving 2.
Preserving 2, okay. How about you, Maria Jose?
He's just too quiet, but always observing and wanting to kind of jump in to the conversation, but never allowed to.
You're out of your element, Donnie. You have no frame of reference.
Yeah, so he wanted to, but he kept trying. So that without, he was always encouraged to do that. No, I don't really know.
I think he was a navigating 7, right? Right. Happy-go-lucky, looking at the bright side, always, surprised by things in an interested way, and always pleasant, and yet, kind of being, pushed around by or not pushed around, but just kind of being on the edge there, like we see with transmitting 7. We see with navigating 7s. So the navigating 7 is not really the stereotype of the 7. Right? They're not the transmitting 7, which is outgoing and kind of Robin Williams-ish, but they're, and often mistaken for 2s, which we see because of this desire to please other people. So I would go with a navigating 7 for Donnie. So, favorite lines of the movies, folks? Anything? Because this movie is one of those movies that has, like The Godfather, quite a few quotable lines. Any favorite lines?
I just love the fact that when he says that the rug tied the room together, it's just so absurd, just so absurd. And he felt so fond of this rug, and how I think it's brilliant.
And oddly enough, the character that the dude was based on by the Coen brothers was his name was Jeff Dowd, and he was he was a 60s radical who sort of bumbled his way into the film industry, and also he kept talking about this rug that got ruined and how it held the room together, right? And that became the inspiration for the dude. So, all right. Tamara, how about you?
Yeah, not really lines as much as the whole movie, the dude does not talk about himself, his background, his history. Only after making love with Julianne Moore, she asks him about what did you do in your life, and this is the only scene that you can find him talking about himself.
Yes, and even that was, was pretty limited,
Very
right?
abstract.
Yes, I was one of the Seattle Seven, which was a group of anti-war protesters in the late 60s, early 70s, were charged with incitement of riots. When Brandt was showing him the Big Lebowski's plaques and all of that stuff, he said, "Did you go to college, Mr. Lebowski?" And he said, "Well, yeah, sort of. I was there. Took over some, school buildings, held some protests, smoked a lot of Thai stick," right? So, but you're right. He's just kind of this character who exists independent of time and place. You could plop him down anywhere and he would sort of fit in. My favorite line, quite frankly, is one I barely noticed until this last watching, is, "How are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen Carl Hungus?" So you'll have to watch the movie to understand what that's all about. But I'm a big fan of the movie The Big Lebowski. If you haven't watched it, I hope you'll give it a try. It's really, really, really demonstrates Enneagram Type 9.
Yeah, and in terms of a movie, I think this is the kind of movie when I'm stressed and I don't want to watch something that make me think, that would be this movie.
That's right. All right. Maria Jose, final thoughts?
I just couldn't stop laughing last night when I was watching it for the last time, when the ashes came on his face. It was just such a laugh, and I can't stop laughing now. And I agree with Tamer. It's something that it's just light, funny, but full of details that are just enjoyable.
All right. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, where we talked about Type 9 in the movie The Big Lebowski. Next up is Enneagram Type 1. I don't want to give away the movie yet, though, so we'll have to wait and see.
You've been listening to the Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed the podcast, we ask you to go to wherever you get your podcasts and give us a review. Visit us at awareness2action.com and follow Awareness to Action on social media.